Here right now.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Secure the Bag session for Career Day. So we can teach you guys about various opportunities, career opportunities in industry and government. So I'm going to first start out by introducing all the panelists and also giving just a brief statement. First, just so it's clear, the views reflect the individual employees, so the panelists themselves. They do not reflect their past or present employers, just to make that clear. So we'll go ahead and get started. So I'm Dr. Brandon Angelon Foster. I'm a microbiologist at the FDA, and so I'll be, again, the moderator for this session. And we also here have Thomas Bodie, Dr. Thomas Bodie. He is a AAAS Science and Technology Policy Fellow at the National Institutes of Health. We have Dr. Richard Bissingham, who's Principal Scientist at Johnson & Johnson. Dr. Shayla West Barnett, who's at the FDA Center for Food Safety and Applied Nutrition. And lastly, we also have Jasmine Santiago, who's a group leader at PPD. So we'll go ahead and get started. Just some brief introductory questions. So for each of the panelists, can you just give me a general day-by-day description of your responsibilities and what motivated you to pursue these respective career paths in government and industry? Go ahead first with Richard.
We're all waiting for that cue. Hi, thanks for having me, and thanks for such a great initiative. Like Brandon said, I'm Richard Bissingham, and I work for Johnson & Johnson. And prior to that, I was a postdoctoral fellow for the University of Florida for a number of years. And what drew me to a career in industry was how I love the science, but then it was an opportunity for me to use my science to do something a little bit more tangible that I could see affecting the lives of human beings. So I work for the consumer sector of Johnson & Johnson, and if you know, we make more consumer healthcare products. So it takes a relatively shorter amount of time from the time it goes from an idea to a product on the shelf. So that to me was very exciting, that I can work on something and actually see the life cycle of my science and how it affects humans. And to this first part of the question, actually, my day-to-day, contrary to my life in academia, doesn't consist of entirely time spent in the lab. As a matter of fact, I do spend significantly less time in the lab than I do in the office, attending meetings. And in today's world, virtual meetings with different partners, regulatory, business, clinical ops, product development scientists, and coming up with decisions that drive the science from the bench all the way to a product. So I guess I can end there.
Just as a brief follow-up, what specific products do you work on in terms of consumer health at J&J, at least that you're allowed to talk about?
So yeah, so I am primarily in what we call in consumer health, our essential health franchise. So products like Listerine for mouthwash, Listerines, Band-Aid, baby care products. But because I am an upstream innovation scientist, I also do work cross-franchise, so with skin health products that you probably have in your bathrooms, the Neutrogenas, the Avenos, and Neostratas, and OGX.
Okay. So did anyone else want to follow up to Richard?
I can follow up.
Okay.
So I think the first part of the question is day to day. So yeah. I work for the Office of Food Additive Safety within FDA. And where I work, we are responsible for making sure that ingredients that are added to foods are safe. And so pretty much if it's on your table, if it's in your cabinets, if you're putting it on your plate tonight, we would look at the ingredients in the foods that you would consume. And so what my day-to-day really involves is a lot of meetings. I will say I'm no longer a lab scientist. I'm more of in an office job. And so a lot of what we do are meetings internally to talk about regulatory issues, scientific questions, anything that we may need to be sure to have resolved. And then a lot of meetings with industry where they're coming to us to talk with us about their ingredients and making sure that they're meeting our regulatory requirements and the scientific requirements. I lead a team, so a big chunk of my time is spent looking at work products, providing comments, providing any sort of input that might help us come up with the best work product possible. A lot of resolving issues. We have really a team setting that really underlies everything that we do. And so if there are issues between my team and another team, if needed, I'll jump in and help out resolving that as well.
So do you have a food science background, or is it specifically microbiology? How was that sort of transition going from micro to more food-oriented type work?
Sure. So I did not have a food science background before I got to FDA. My background is in microbial pathogenesis, specifically bacteriology. That's where I got my doctorate degree in. I had not done any food science until I got to FDA. So a lot of what we do is learning on the job, where you come in with your strong area of expertise and that scientific background, and then you use that to learn the science and the regulation behind what FDA does, specifically what my office does.
Okay. Sounds really exciting. So Jasmine and Thomas, did either of you want to go?
Yeah, I can go next. So I am the group leader of our PPD site's Good Manufacturing Practice Laboratory, or GMP lab, which simply put means we play a role in the pharmaceutical manufacturing process. So specifically, our lab tests mouse sera injected with various doses of a particular vaccine. And we're responsible for ensuring that each individual lot meets specifications prior to release onto the market. So I do lead a small team, and they're responsible for virtually every facet of the operation, from receipt of the samples, sample processing, execution and prep and execution of the assay, data analysis, review, all the way through to data archival. We're also in charge of scheduling, data trending, troubleshooting, lab and instrument maintenance, and also prep, screening, and qualification of the critical reagents that are used in our assay. So really everything required to keep the operation going, my small team does. So my job in a nutshell is overseeing all of these areas, but me, much like Richard and Shayla, a lot of my days are spent in meetings, doing work behind the scenes, troubleshooting, putting out fires, trying to make sure that everything runs smoothly. Also interacting with the client, vendors, regulatory auditors, whatever the need may be, as the lab subject matter expert. So very broad scope. My day-to-day varies very vastly. It definitely keeps my job interesting. And as far as what motivated me to pursue this career, I've always just been intrigued by the sciences. I'm the type of person that likes to know all the details about all the things. And I'm just fascinated by the intricacies of sciences at the molecular level. I always loved genetics and biochemistry. It's all just really fascinating for me. So I did consider going back to school after undergrad, and I considered various career paths, but ultimately decided to go directly into the industry and started with the entry-level position at PPD, and that brought me to where I am today.
Wow. So you've really worked your way up, starting at sort of the assistant or associate scientist level all the way up to now being a group leader.
Yes, yep, I did.
So Thomas?
Yes, so I am a AAAS Science and Technology Policy Fellow at the National Institutes of Health. I'm placed at the National Institute of Dental and Craniofacial Research, where I'm at the Office of Science Policy and Analysis. There, we're kind of like a one-stop shop, kind of jack of all trades place where we handle all the policy aspects of the Institute. For example, I work a lot with our interactions with congressional leadership. I help manage our interactions with Congress and draft documents with a congressional audience. Also, we handle all of our institute's stakeholder outreach, interfacing with different professional organizations, universities, et cetera, that are interested in the mission of our institutes. I also help organize a lot of our institute's diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. And we also handle our institute's analysis problems as well. In terms of my background, kind of how I got into science policy, my background is originally protozoan parasitology. I worked with protozoan parasites and neglected tropical diseases. And what I do now is kind of completely different from what I did in my PhD. I kind of wanted to have a new experience and kind of spread my wings and learn some new things. And science policy allows me to kind of see science from a different perspective. And I'm enjoying it so far.
That's really good because I mean, looking across the panel, I mean, we have people in government that are doing more regulatory science. You have you working more in science policy, interacting with stakeholders within Congress and other external parties, from consumer health all the way to vaccine development, specifically in a GMP setting. Um, so additional follow-up questions. So how did your earlier career choices lead you to where you are now? And for two specific panelists, both Thomas and Shayla, if you could speak to your experience attending HBCUs and how that therefore shaped your subsequent career choices.
I guess I can kind of start with that. So I went to Hampton University for undergrad and got my PhD at Howard University. For that one part of the question in terms of HBCUs, I think HBCUs are just, in general, it's a very nurturing environment, and it's not really about competitiveness and kind of trying to outdo everyone else. It's really like a family environment. Like my PI, my advisor, he would give me the shirt off his back if I needed it. You know, it was just like an uncle to me, you know, and kind of provided me with that kind of a different kind of mentorship than I may have received possibly at, you know, some other institutions. So my experiences at HBCUs were absolutely critical for me being able to go where I am now, I think. In terms of, what was the other question? I'm sorry.
That's fine. How your earlier career choices influenced where you are now. So how did working in parasitology as a PhD student influence your decision to pursue a career in science policy?
Yeah, so for me, my PhD was kind of a long and arduous journey. I had a lot of ups and downs during my PhD. I enjoyed what I did in my projects, and I enjoyed the bench, but I kind of was getting a little worn out with the bench, and I wanted to try something a little bit different. And I heard about science policy through various colleagues, and just the concept of science policy and how I'm able to like utilize my scientific expertise and knowledge in a kind of a different context. I can still, you know, talk my science, but at the same time, I can utilize some of my other skills that I have, like my interpersonal skills, my science communication skills, particularly communicating science to lay audiences and non-scientific audiences, really kind of lends towards this career in science policy that I'm undertaking right now.
Shayla?
Yes, so let me just make sure, okay, I'm not on mute. So I attended Bennett College. It's a HBCU for women. And I honestly have to say that is the best decision I've ever made in my life. I think not just from an educational perspective, but from a personal perspective of being somewhere where I wasn't just included, I was in a place whose primary mission is to empower people like me, women of color, Black women, in particular, women who don't necessarily come from affluent backgrounds. And so I think the best thing that I got from Bennett College, in addition to my education, was a sense of confidence, a sense of knowing who I am and knowing what it is that I'm capable of. And I think that was very important because when I left that environment and pursued my PhD and finished my PhD at Wake Forest University, I mean, it was a different environment. You go from an HBCU that's created for you to a place that, okay, yeah, you can come here and yeah, you can come here and I'll leave that there. And so I think that sense of confidence of being able to speak for myself, being able to articulate, being able to analyze, being able to, even though I'm not in an environment that a lot of people look like me, being able to carry myself like I know I belong there. And so I think that was the first decision. I think being in graduate school, I enjoyed research at the time, but I think I lost my passion for research while I was earning my doctorate degree. I think the program that I was in for my doctorate, really what they preached was academics. So you were to get your doctorate degree, get a postdoc, and then eventually go on to write grants and to have your own lab. I knew at the time I didn't want to do that. I wasn't really sure what else to do. And so when I did my postdoc, I was at NIH. I was also at NIDCR, just like Thomas. Really, most of my time there was spent trying to figure out what I wanted to do. There were a lot of different seminars, a lot of different workshops geared at looking at the different career paths. And I really took advantage of pretty much everything I could get my hands on to figure out, you know, what are the other options. And, you know, being here in the DC area, government is big. And so I spent a lot of time looking at careers in government. What does it mean to be a scientist in the government that doesn't work at the bench? And so that really helped me make a decision about what direction I wanted to go in, and I have not looked back since I made that decision.
No, that's really good because I think a lot of PhD students have that, at least experience that challenge during their doctoral studies, that there's a lot of pressure to only consider academia when we really should be a little bit more open and consider careers in nonprofit sector, government, private sector, because we really can leverage our technical skill set and our soft skills to be successful in any role. Just as a follow-up specifically to Richard, did you also experience some of those challenges as well as a PhD student and as a postdoc?
Absolutely, Brendan. And in all fairness, it's not like we're throwing shade at our professors and PIs. You can only teach people as much as you do know, and that's what they did know.
Yeah.
Most of them never worked in the government. Right. They never worked in industry. So industry, I can remember as far back as my PhD days and even my postdoc days, was almost always considered as the dark side. So you're going there for either they say you're going there for the money, or you are going there because you don't want to do a whole lot of the science or the writing. And most of that wasn't true. So your parents always tell you the best way to learn about something is not to learn from somebody who hasn't gone through that. So I think most of our, especially our graduate programs, need some sort of an overhauling where you actually do get folks from these different parts of the workforce coming to teach some of these courses. You do need folks from industry coming to teach folks during their grad school days what it takes to actually get a job in the industry, or what it takes to get a job with the FDA or with the NIH, so that we are more rounded, that we're not just grooming future professors. And only 10%, come to think about it, only about 10% of PhD students do become professors. I wanted to become one of those. And unlike Shayla, I was almost 50-50. I really did want to become a professor, partly because there aren't that many of us, so I thought it would be a good idea. Kids who look like me to see a professor who looks like them teaching science. I got my PhD in biochemistry, so most of the Black professors that I saw, I went to Notre Dame for grad school, were not science professors. They were either like African American history or some of the arts. So I felt like our science disciplines were very lacking. So I thought it was my mandate to become the Black science biochemistry professor. But then as I realized that I didn't like some of the politics in academia, as Shayla mentioned, and I was also interested in industry, I didn't know that in industry, I could do a whole lot of some of the things that pulled me to academics, like mentoring, like teaching younger scientists or mentoring, grooming other scientists. So now I get to do both, so it makes me really happy.
And so as a follow-up to that for Jasmine, were you able to attend any sort of seminars in college that told you about working in industry, or did you do any internships? Because the other panelists ended up getting PhDs and doing postdocs and then transitioning either into government or private sector. So I wanted to hear a little bit about more of your experience making that transition.
Right, so I did do a couple of internships in college. I knew for certain that I wanted to remain in the sciences. I just wasn't positive which path I wanted to take. I had considered a veterinarian. I had shadowed a veterinarian, and more in the latter stages of my undergraduate, I was really interested in pharmacy school. I really thought I was going to be a pharmacist, and I was really set on that. But ultimately, it really came down to what was best for me in my life at that time. And going back to school at that point in time, not that I wasn't interested in it, but I didn't have, I had not narrowed down a focus of what I wanted to pursue further. And I also, at that point, it was better for me in the stage that I was in my life to go into work. And I kind of left it at, I'll start with a job and kind of see where that leads me. And so I did go directly into industry, and I went into an entry-level position at PPD, and I have been with PPD for the entirety of my professional career. So it has worked out for me nicely. And I think what has kept me there is the opportunities that I have taken advantage of, and the opportunities for growth and advancement. So I did start out at the entry-level position in 2010. I started out as a biofunctional assay analyst, and from there, I really just capitalized on every opportunity that I could to gain experience and to further develop myself. So I cross-trained as a liquid handling operator, and I excelled as a lead trainer and lead reviewer, lead scheduler, helped with investigations and writing standard operating procedures. And I really just aimed to stand out in whatever I took on. And eventually I worked my way up the ladder as an individual contributor. And when the GMP lab came to fruition in 2015, they were specifically looking for a manager that had the capacity to take on a broad scope. And so by excelling in so many different areas, I had really positioned myself to be the ideal candidate for that specific role. And so that was my opportunity to be promoted from individual contributor to manager. And I really did enjoy leading teams and leading people. And so this opportunity really was the best fit for me. It was an extremely steep learning curve, to say the least, moving into GMP, not only leading a team in a startup lab, but a GMP startup lab. There were a lot of new guidelines and regulations that I was not aware of going into it. But honestly, I've learned so much, and I am incredibly grateful for everything that I have experienced up to this point, and am continuing to learn to this day.
Yeah. So the panelists may not be aware of this, and some of the audience, but I also worked at PPD before I transitioned into the FDA. And working in a GMP or even a GCLP, clinical laboratory practices lab, it can be a very steep learning curve. It's a very different environment than a traditional academic lab where you're doing fundamental basic science research, where in GMP or GCLP, there are a lot of regulations, so it can be very challenging. But I think what helped me at least is that I was able to reach out and get mentors within PPD, or even with meeting with some of our client managers to help me in that role. And so I wanted to sort of ask the rest of the panelists, have you identified any sort of career mentors and how they've helped you transition at these points, or even in your current role? How have they helped you be successful and influence you in certain directions?
I can start with the response to that. So I have had and still have several mentors. Some of them are fellow scientists, some of them are not. One thing I've learned is you can learn a lot about the organization that you work in and how to navigate that from people who don't do science. You know, the science is one part of FDA, but FDA has its own politics. We have, you know, things that go on beyond the science that if you're not savvy about and you don't know how to navigate, it can be one of those things that holds you back. And so I've been very fortunate to have a Black woman who was my mentor many years ago. I will say that there aren't very many, really where I am, there aren't any senior level Black employees. And so, you know, you got to take your mentors where you can find them. If you find people who are willing to be candid with you and willing to get to know you, you got to open yourself up to that. And I've been really fortunate to have people who have stepped up to be mentors to help me, not just career-wise, but also personally, you know, how to, you know, deal with those things that kind of straddle your work and personal life. How do you deal with, you know, in the workplace, those people who maybe don't want to see you as a leader and don't want to see you in a position of authority? How do you deal with that? How do you navigate that professionally in a way that doesn't harm you? I've actually had people be really generous with their time and with their experience and with their advice, and I value all of them. And that's one piece of advice. Be open to mentors that don't look like you, especially if you're in a place where there aren't people that look like you that have, you know, been able to climb the ladder. That's just some advice I would offer.
What about you, Thomas?
Yeah, mentoring has been absolutely instrumental in like every stage in my career, from undergrad at Hampton to graduate school at Howard to where I am now. Like I'm one of those people that kind of accumulates mentors. Like that relationship is very important to me. I think it's very important to have people who share your goals and your ambitions, as well as kind of share your value system and beliefs and stuff like that, in order to kind of, you can see someone who's been to where you want to be, and kind of you have some footsteps to follow in. Like you said, like Shayla said as well, it's also kind of important sometimes to acknowledge sometimes we may need to seek mentorship where we're not necessarily used to seeking it, in terms of people who may not look like us, or people who are kind of on alternative paths. And also peer mentorship as well has been critical. As a AAAS fellow, the mentorship pool, just the different fellows, has been so critical to my success, just helping to navigate something that was completely new to me. So, and in terms of mentoring, I hope to in the future, kind of share that role and be that person to someone, coming behind me as well, to kind of share that wealth in terms of the importance of that mentor-mentee relationship.
So something I'm going to follow up on that Shayla had mentioned and Thomas had mentioned as well, is that sometimes you experience challenges in the workplace and you lean on your mentor to get advice about how to navigate through some of those problems. So are there any unique challenges you faced and how you've dealt with them being a Black scientist within your organization? And what is it like, the climate, in terms of being a Black scientist? I'll turn it over to Jasmine.
Yeah, I mean, it can certainly be challenging at times. I think there are just certain considerations and stressors that don't necessarily impact non-Black scientists or people in general in the same way, from maneuvering microaggressions to processing systemic racism and the Black Lives Matter movement, to things really as minor as managing natural Black curls, like things that we can relate to in our culture that not everybody else does. And I think they're just these types of things that you typically don't think about unless you're Black. For me, I am fortunate in that I have a colleague with whom I share an office who is also a Black woman. So I'm able to talk with her about shared cultural experiences, and we can be sounding boards for one another. It really helps to not feel alone in the workplace, to have somebody who can relate to me and the things that I go through as a Black woman. And it's been really important to have that outlet. And I think that's the type of thing that non-minority groups really may take for granted.
Richard?
Yeah, so I agree with what Jasmine just said, and Shayla and Thomas as well. There definitely are challenges. There are always going to be challenges by virtue of the fact that you are, in most cases, less than 5% of the general population. But in addition to the challenges, sometimes I also take it as an opportunity, like, okay, especially during the whole Black Lives Matter, George Floyd crisis. Okay, these are people who most likely for the rest of their life will not experience something like this. But they do know me, and I believe they do trust me. And if I do share my experiences with them, they will believe that I'm telling them the truth. So such that it's not just something that you see on TV happening to some people that you don't know. So during this time last year, coupled with the pandemic, I think it was a good part of the challenge was that, okay, I'm getting to spend myself emotionally a whole lot because I'm having to relive some not so pleasant experiences. But I also took pleasure in the fact that, hey, I am educating this person with my experiences. It's painful, they are unpleasant experiences, but I'm going to use this opportunity to let you know what goes on, what happens to people who look like me, who have a PhD, who walk into a store and they get a cop called on them because they walked into a store looking suspicious. So when you tell a fellow friend who doesn't look like you, who doesn't even believe that things like this exist or happen to people like us, who are the minority, not just by virtue of our ethnicity, but by virtue of our education, you will not believe things like this would happen to PhD holders. But like, hey, it does happen to me regularly. I do have to pay attention when I walk into a grocery store to make sure that my hands are to myself so that nobody suspects me. So while it was a challenge, while I did spend a whole lot of emotional energy on things like that, it was also an opportunity to educate people.
Yeah, I definitely had similar experiences in my previous role. In my new role, I haven't had that much of an interaction with too many people, but especially during the Black Lives Matter protest in downtown Richmond, I ended up talking to quite a few coworkers, and being a manager, being one of the few managers, as Jasmine had mentioned, that was Black, dealing with those challenges and making sure that I could be honest and open with a couple, either my direct reports or just team members about how I'm dealing with that emotionally. And so Shayla, Thomas, did you want to speak on this as well?
Yeah, I mean, I
Shayla,
think, oh, I'm sorry. I would say, you know, some of my experiences, I think Jasmine mentioned the microaggressions. You know, I've been in meetings where I'm the microbiologist, and then maybe somebody is asking a scientific question and they happen to turn and pose that question to somebody else other than me. You know, trying to navigate situations and being able to articulate, you know, no, you and I can have that conversation. I'm the scientist, but in a professional way. You know, I think there's always something, and, you know, trying to draw that line of between, okay, do I need to educate this person? Do I need to just move on? Because I have to be honest, sometimes I feel like if I were to take up every microaggression, maybe I could spend all day doing that. And so being able to draw that line between, okay, well, what do I need to confront? What do I need to speak to versus what do I need to just kind of push away for later? And also having somebody to be a sounding board. I mean, there's a lot of emotion when you're encountering these microaggressions, when you're turning on the TV and you're seeing the movement and everything that happened over this past year. You go to work with that emotion. That's not something that you just leave at home. And having people that will actually look at you, even especially people who don't necessarily look like me, having somebody look at me and say, hey, Shayla, how are you really doing with this? Because there are people that don't look like me who I've been able to open up to, who have expressed their sincere care and concern. And so I think developing those relationships with people that you know care about you, people that you know want the best for you and want to see you do the best that you can, it's going to be essential across the board. And I'm glad to have had those relationships.
Yeah, I agree with all the panelists. You know, it's in certain scenarios that you're in, you know, you are the unicorn. You may be one of only a handful of folks that look like you in certain areas. So it can be like, I've definitely dealt with, you know, those certain type of microaggressions that we've all dealt with in terms of, oh, you know, you're very articulate. Like you weren't expecting me to be articulate because of the way I look, you know, those sort of things that, you know, we have to deal with. And it can be emotionally taxing to have to be the one every time something happens on the news. You know, your coworkers are kind of maybe looking at you maybe to kind of explain certain things or to kind of help them navigate their feelings on something that, you know, may affect you as well. So I think it's very important to try to enter spaces where people are actually caring about you. Like I feel like where I am now, like, you know, most of the people, you know, it's a caring environment where, you know, they actually listen and have, you know, I'm on a bunch of initiatives in terms of diversity, equity, inclusion, and there's actual, like, they acknowledge, like, yes, these are things that we've been talking about for years and years, and every time we have a media group, a working group to discuss it, and it seems like nothing ever gets done in terms of like diversity and equity in the workplace, you know, but it seems like now there's more of a genuine concern about, okay, how can we actually tackle these problems? How can we navigate these difficult conversations? So that's something to consider as well.
Yeah, okay. So we'll transition into maybe one or two more questions, and then we'll turn to the audience. So what effect does your career have on your lifestyle and your family? So at least while I was a PhD student and postdoc, we always have these discussions that it's challenging to have good work-life balance as an academic because you spend a lot of time in the lab, you might be in lab on the weekends. And when I transitioned into private sector, in the beginning, I had better work-life balance. That was before the pandemic hit and before I took on major projects. So I did find it challenging to have good work-life balance, even in private sector, because I always hear people talk about, oh, it'll be so much better on the other side. The grass is always greener on the other side, but that's not always the case. So can you guys talk about balancing your career and life? Turn to Shayla.
Sure. So I'll start by saying, I have a husband. I've been married for over 15 years. Also have an 11-year-old son. And one of the things that I'm glad about career-wise is that my career doesn't involve like unscheduled work or emergency type work. I don't deal with food outbreaks. We don't have, those sorts of emergency situations where you have to run to the office and do things. So I work a predictable schedule. And my schedule very rarely changes. And so what that allows is for me to be involved with my son's school. I've been a PTA president for several years. Just last week, I was able to attend back to school night virtually. My son also plays a sport. He's an ice hockey player. So practices, I'm able to get him there. I don't miss games. And people at my job all know that my son does these things. I will not miss that. I refuse to miss that. I also am very blessed to have a husband who's just as involved as I am. And so, when it comes to taking care of our house, taking care of our son, spending time with each other, my job is not a hindrance to any of that. So that's one of the things that I love about the career path that I chose, is it's a predictable schedule. I can tell you what my schedule is going to look like next week. There's really very little reasons for that to ever change. And that's something that I appreciate about the career path that I chose.
Richard?
Yeah, so mine is a little different from Shayna's. Mine is not as I don't want to use the word rigid because mine is not as predictable. But I do like the fact that mine is very, very flexible. So and I'm cognizant of the fact that that's not the same for every industry position and for every company. So that's the one good thing that I'm really, really happy about concerning the company that I work for, in that I can almost make my own schedule. I didn't have to go to work site during the pandemic, in the heart of the pandemic. Eventually I got cabin fever and I pushed myself to go. But I can make my own schedule and do things as they work for me and my family. I happen to have a wife who is a pediatrician, and I can use the term rigid. Her own schedule is quite rigid, and it doesn't make for very fluid work-life balance. So I have a 5-year-old son, and I'm very pleased that my job permits me to accommodate certain nuances of having a 5-year-old. And so, but I do understand that somebody who has like a manufacturing role would not be able to do that.
Okay, what about you, either Thomas or Jasmine?
I can go. So I will say, starting out, particularly as a manager, work-life balance was it was a struggle for me. I think starting out with the lab, there was so much work to be done, and I put so much pressure on myself to succeed and to not fail. And so to me, that translated into coming in early, leaving late. I would go home and open the laptop and essentially work for hours on end. And it got to a point where it wasn't healthy for me. And I realized that something had to give. And so I really had to set boundaries for myself and set those limits and know when to turn work off. And not to say that work can't be a priority or that it shouldn't be, because I certainly think that it should. It's just knowing yourself and your wellness and what works for you, and really sticking to those boundaries and those limits, and putting your wellness first and foremost, and ensuring that you can be there for your family. And I have a 4-year-old and a 12-year-old. And between the two of them, we have soccer practice and dance class and gymnastics and robotics club. And so I'm able to shuttle them everywhere they need to go between myself and my husband and get to their games and performances. And that's really important to me, because those things I won't get back. The work will always be there. And I could to this day work for hours on end, and there would still be work. And so I really have to set that priority for myself and really consider what's important. And I think the sooner that you learn that, the better off you'll be for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I was that grad student had the weird hours. I was always coming in late in the afternoon and, you know, kind of staying late. So it was actually an adjustment for me to kind of adhere to like the 9 to 5. Like, I feel like my brain is clicking like around this time at like 6 or 7, like I can get a little bit more work done. So it's actually been kind of a good adjustment for me to kind of narrow things down to like a 9 to 5. And if I'm doing something beyond 5 o'clock, it's because, you know, it's totally on me. It's because I procrastinated on something. But generally speaking, you know, it's a very good feeling to be, you know, if you see 5 o'clock and you're like, okay, I'm done for the day. I don't have to wait on this long time point in the lab or something like that. So it's been a very good transition for me, to say the least.
Yeah, I definitely had a similar experience with Thomas, and that as a PhD student, I effectively had no work-life balance, and pretty much everyone would tell you that. But in making my transition from being a postdoc to industry, I made a more concerted effort to, even if I worked longer hours, I would close my laptop at a very specific time. Like if I started working at 6 or 7 in the morning, that's fine, but I needed to close my laptop at 5 p.m. No debates about that. And then also making sure I don't get any work done on the weekend. That way I'm refreshed as I walk into the work week. So yeah, it's challenging, but I'm getting much better at it, especially now working for the government.
And
Since we're winding.
Real quick,
ahead,
Brandon, about that, because I do know that we have a significant number of PhD students listening to us and postdocs. I think it's time that we demystify that myth that working yourself to death is a virtue. It is not.
Yeah.
It is actually very, very counterproductive. And for some reason, in grad school, they drill all of us into telling us, oh, if you do not spend 18 hours in the lab doing a PCR, then you're not.
That you're not passionate, yeah.
It is actually not true. It's counterproductive. So we do, like Jasmine said, we do have to set those boundaries, and the sooner we learn how to set those boundaries and say, okay, I'm working from this time to this time, I'm going to shut that laptop and not even respond to emails, to give yourself time to think and innovate. I think most of us would have completed our PhD much sooner than we actually did if we follow those principles.
So as we begin to wrap up the panel, I just wanted to ask, were there any parting words of wisdom or advice that you have for the audience before we move on to some of their questions? I'll start off first with Thomas.
Yeah, so we kind of touched on this a little bit earlier in terms of academia and kind of transitioning to ulterior career paths. I know some people say like, oh, they heard that their PI said, oh yeah, they don't want you to go to industry or whatever because it's the dark side. Like, and I've heard those horror stories too. Like for me, my PI was very supportive of whatever it is that I wanted to do. But in terms of like help navigating, you know, what the other options are, you know, not everyone in my department knew about different avenues in terms of how to transition to industry or how to transition to the federal government. So if it may help to seek out alternative mentors, people, you know, reach out on LinkedIn to people who are doing things that you like to do. Different programs like Brandon and I were in the SNDP program, which partners you with a mentor in the industry and kind of helps you navigate that transition. So that would be something to consider if you're interested in these kind of, you know, non-academia roles.
Yeah, as a postdoc, I'm going to just bounce off what Thomas said. I had a really supportive PI, Dr. Kumran Ramamurthy. He let me go off in the middle of the day to do informational interviews, whether they be in academia. I interviewed a professor at Howard. I was still considering academia at that time. Also interviewed Shayla. And so he was really supportive of whatever career I wanted to pursue. So it's really important to find mentors like that. And as Thomas mentioned, programs like Scientist Mentoring and Diversity Program, where you can get a mentor if you're interested in industry, and they can give you advice about making these transitions and how critical they are. So I'll turn it over to Shayla. Any advice?
Sure. I think the best piece of advice I would give would be to follow whatever path is for you, whatever your path is, whatever it is that makes you happy, where your passion is. Follow that and follow it unapologetically. I would say if I were to look over my career and think of where I might regret, I regret that it took me so long to leave the lab and to move on. I think During my postdoc, at one point I came down with strep throat, and my doctor advised me to stay home and to be on the antibiotic for some 2 or 3 days. And I remember at that time being so excited because I'm like, yes, I don't have to go back to the lab for 2 or 3 days. So at that point in time, I was excited to be sick with a contagious disease. And I remember at that point, my husband said, you know, you really can just do something else career-wise. Like, you don't have to, you know, suffer through each day and show up every day to a job that you're not passionate about, and that, quite frankly, you don't want to be at. And I think that was a turning point for me. But if I could go back, I would have made that decision sooner, and I would have done it unapologetically. Look, the lab thing was fine. I got my doctorate degree. I'm moving on. And I would say, you know, at whatever point in your career that you're at, wherever your passions take you, go there, do it for yourself, do it for the people around you who want you to be happy, have no regrets, and make no apologies for it.
Absolutely. Jasmine, Richard?
Yeah, so I will say, don't let anyone dim your shine, but also don't dim your own shine. I will say for me, even in my position that I'm in now, when the opportunity presented itself, my manager at the time, she sent a message to the team, and she said, if anybody's interested in these positions, send me an email, let me know. And so I wasn't sure. I felt like I wasn't ready. Another week went by, and she sent another email, like, if you're interested in any of these positions, let me know. And I still didn't say anything. And by that point, I had more or less talked myself out of it. I convinced myself that I didn't have enough experience and I wasn't ready. And eventually she pulled me to the side and she's like, Jasmine, are you going to apply for this manager position, or what are you doing? And I told her, I don't think I'm ready. I think I need more experience. And she told me candidly, I know you, I know your work, and you're ready for this. You can do it. And so that push really led me to really learn to believe in myself. And I think you have to learn to be your own biggest advocate and to go forward and follow your passion, like Shayla said.
Thanks, Jasmine. So my advice would be sort of a melange between what Jasmine said and what Thomas said. That you do need people to help you in this journey, and especially some of us who are getting a PhD, we thought we were quite smart and we could do it on our own. And that was one of the most stupid things that I ever thought of. You do need people. That's why these mentorship programs are of phenomenal importance. So I would say, if you do not have people that you can trust, who can mentor you, who can teach you, regardless of where you want to go, whether you want to stay in academia or you want to go into the government or into the industry, look for people who have walked that path. People who look like you, people who do not look like you, people who sound like you, people who do not sound like you. The more diverse your perspectives are, the better you are for the job market, for your career when you do get the job. So Brandon and Thomas did attend the SMDP that I did attend as well. When they did a couple of years ago, I was actually a mentor. So look for mentors, mentor other people. That's just how you develop yourself as a better professional, as a better scientist, as a better person in general. So if you do not know where to look for these mentors, as a Black microbiologist, the SMDP, so we just shared the link on the chart. The SMDP Biotech is a great place to start. That's where I started my own career in industry. And it's amazing the kind of mentors that you will get from there, people that you would otherwise probably never meet until you become somewhere up there. My mentor was a VP at Amgen. He was a white guy when I started. I've had VPs and senior directors from different companies. So make the most of opportunities like these, especially when you're a student. You are more cute because people like you and you are easy to, it's easier for people to take care of you when you're in school than when you're out of school. So use these opportunities right now and make the most of them.
Yeah, so I'm gonna just do a quick follow-up in that. One piece of advice I would give is be open to many different opportunities. Don't be Don't pre-select a career path and think that's the only thing that you need to do for the rest of your life. Learn about other opportunities. So very early on, I thought the only thing I want to do is academia. But then I opened up to the possibility of being a research scientist in industry or doing regulatory review in government. And so I learned about all of these opportunities that could still leverage my technical skill set, my soft skills, and also give me the opportunity to shine and contribute to product development for infectious disease. So I think being flexible, you can learn about a variety of different careers. So I'll take it to one of the questions we got in the Whova app. So someone wanted to know as how long it took each of you to actually reach the position that you're in now. So some of you are managers, some of you are sort of just starting out or at transition points in your career. I'll turn it over to Thomas to speak first.
Yeah, so like I kind of mentioned earlier, right after my PhD, I knew I kind of wanted to do something different. I did the S&DP program, which was, phenomenal in terms of just like networking with other individuals who kind of were on the same wavelength. Also heard about the AAAS fellowship, which I mentioned previously, and just how that just completely meshed with me, like how it allowed, like science policy in general just allows you to have a different impact on science from a different angle. Of course, bench research is very important, but there's also a whole different aspect of like, how do we implement science, in order to, help people at a large scale. So being able, just hearing about science policy and the AAAS fellowship in general, for me, has been like a phenomenal experience.
Okay. Shayla?
Sure. So I started FDA in 2008, and I was promoted to a leadership role in 2013. So the time from the entry-level position to the leadership position was 5 years. I think in between, not only was I showing my ability to do my job, I started out as a reviewer, a microbiology reviewer. So I spent a lot of time showing my technical skill and showing that I can write and communicate the way that we need to write and communicate with our stakeholders in the government. But I also took advantage of the leadership programs that my job has. I think FDA and my center offer really high quality leadership programs where you get a chance to stretch and to grow and to develop yourself, not as a scientist, but as a leader. Those are really two different sets of skills. And so I would say that those leadership programs are a big part of, number one, how I realized that I was interested in leadership and how I realized that I was skilled in leadership. And I rely on those leadership programs to help me develop those skills to make myself competitive for the leadership role that I have now.
What about you, Jasmine or Richard?
Yeah, so I started at the entry level at PPD. It was an associate scientist. And so from there, I was promoted to scientist and then senior scientist. And within about 3.5 years, that's when I received the opportunity to be promoted into management. And so that was the associate group leader level. And like Shayla said, it's a very different type of role, going from an individual contributor to managing a team, because I still have my own work to manage, but now I'm also managing people and mentoring people and helping them to develop and to achieve their career goals as well. And so it's two very different roles that are meshed into one. And so that has been both a challenge, but also something that I've really enjoyed. And since then, I have been promoted from associate group leader to group leader. And that was a couple of years ago now. And so it's been a journey, and I've really had experience both in the individual scientist in the lab now to more behind the scenes and helping to develop people. And I've found the value in both of those paths. I'm still we still have development courses as well for training and managing, or training leaders and developing leaders to further develop that role. And it's truly important. I have a manager under me now, and developing her and the team. There's definitely a lot that goes into in different skills you have to have. You have to manage differently to different people, and they respond to different things. And so it's definitely a journey, and I will continue learning as long as I continue managing different people. And so it's been a challenging journey, but an enjoyable one.
Yeah. So while I was at PPD, I was also a manager. So I transitioned from being a postdoc where I had maybe one or two direct reports, either during summer research projects. But at PPD, I had two direct reports, and then I had to manage a team of 10 to 15 people to get projects done. So it definitely was a steep learning curve, but I think really just having a strong sense of emotional intelligence and recognizing that everyone has a different work style. I think in that time that I was there, I was definitely able to grow. Richard?
Yeah, like you all said, it's not a function of time. It's a function of your skills. So I joined J&J 4 years ago as a senior scientist. And as a senior scientist, okay, you're in charge of projects. And then last year I got promoted to a principal scientist where you're in charge of not projects, but then programs. So it's for some people, it will take 4 years, for some it will take 5 years to get the promotion from one level to another. But like Brandon said, when you go from leading your own work to leading people, where you are not the one particularly doing the work, but you are doing, so your success does not depend on what you do, but how you enable other people do their own jobs well. It takes a whole lot of skills. They are, like Sheila said, it's a totally different set of skills. So it's how you make the most of those opportunities, how you learn how to use those other skills that you didn't learn in the lab and you didn't learn in grad school, how you use those development opportunities to improve on your own professional development. Then it becomes a function of how quickly you grow and not a function of time.
All right, so one quick question, and I think I'll direct this towards Shayla or Richard. So this came from one of our board members within Black and Micro. Is it ever too late for an academic to leave and get a job in industry or government? Sometimes they feel like you have to make this decision early, and if they wait, if they wait, it might be too late if they've been a postdoc too long.
The answer that I would have for that would be no. I think, you have to think about the skills that you develop in your academic position against the skills for the positions that you're interested in. When you make that jump from the lab into more of an office job, what becomes more important than your technical skill are your communication skills, your analytical and problem solving skills, teamwork and team building skills. If you're working on those skills in the job that you have, my opinion, I don't have experience because I didn't come from academia, but my opinion would be that those skills are going to be what are going to be looked at when you're trying to compete for that job outside of academia. And so I think the important thing, yeah, of course, your technical skill is going to be one thing, but to the extent possible that you develop those other skills, those softer skills that really tend to be more important for an office job or a government job like what I do, keep building them and showcase them when you're competing. You have to be able to talk science, but people also want to know, how are you to work with? How well do you write? How well do you adjust from writing in an academic style to more of a legalese type style, which is more along the lines of what we write in the government? So I would think of it as, using the skills that you've been building and showcasing them to the best extent that you can to compete for that job outside of academia.
Yeah, and I agree with Sheila. So we have very smart people. Sometimes grad school probably doesn't tell us that enough. we are smart people, and the skills that you've developed in the course of your PhD or your postdoc, or even as an assistant professor, are very, very transferable. Albeit it will take a little time for you to refine some of those skills, to fine-tune them in the direction that you're taking, whether it's government or in industry, but it's never too late.
All right, thank you everyone, all of the panelists, for participating in this opportunity to talk to the Black and Micro community. So one last thing, we wanted to know if any of the attendees wanted to reach out to you, what platform would be best to reach out? LinkedIn, Twitter?
LinkedIn for me. I don't have a Twitter account. I do have LinkedIn. Please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn.
Same for me, LinkedIn, no Twitter.
LinkedIn, no Twitter.
LinkedIn.
So yes, reach out to all of them on LinkedIn. They are all on LinkedIn because I actually am connected to all of them. But thank you guys, everyone, for the opportunity to hear about your careers. And so just as a highlight, tomorrow we'll be going over Community Day. We'll be discussing how scientists can contribute and serve their community through microbiology. And so we'll have talks by various team members, and the session will be led by Drs. Nynisha Scott and Dominic Carter. And thank you, and goodbye, everybody.
Thank you.
The panelists can
Thank
stay
you.
on. You can stop.
Have a good night.